Your time is the currency of your destiny, and the greatest tragedy of a human life is not death, but a life lived without direction, intention, or self-respect for the assignment God placed inside you. Every person walking this earth has been given the same measure of time each day, yet the outcomes of our lives vary dramatically because the value we place on time determines the value we place on ourselves. When a person wastes time, they are not just wasting minutes or hours, they are wasting the very substance that builds their future. Time was created by God as the environment in which purpose is manifested, and the enemy of your soul understands this more than you do, which is why he does not try to kill you first. He tries to waste you. He drains your years with wrong people, wrong thinking, wrong habits, and wrong priorities until you wake up one day and realize your life has been spent but not invested. The cost of wasted time is always regret that cannot be refunded, because time has no replay button, no reverse gear, and no replacement once it is gone. The reason you must focus on yourself is because no one else has been given the responsibility to manage the assignment God placed within you. People can encourage you, but they can never fulfill purpose for you. People can support you, but they cannot walk your path. People can clap for you, but they cannot sacrifice for your calling. At the end of your life, you will not stand before the opinions of others. You will stand before God, who will ask what you did with what he gave you. The weight of that accountability demands focus, discipline, and intentionality. Yet the world around you is designed to scatter your attention, dilute your energy, and distract your pursuit of excellence. The world thrives on noise, comparison, competition, and meaningless activity that keeps you tired but unfulfilled, busy but unproductive, connected but empty. You were never designed to live according to the expectations of those who are not assigned to your destiny. When you focus on yourself, you are not being arrogant or selfish. You are protecting the environment of your becoming. A seed cannot grow in a crowded place, and neither can a destiny. Every time you give your time to people who do not value progress, you uproot yourself from the soil that was meant to produce greatness. Focus is not about ignoring people. It is about honoring who you are becoming. It is about recognizing that your future is too expensive to negotiate with distractions. Your potential is too sacred to be exposed to people who carry no vision. Your purpose is too important to be shared with those who cannot understand its weight. There are people connected to your destiny who will only find freedom when you become who you are supposed to be. But you will never become it if you spend your life trying to please those who were never meant to walk with you. Time is the evidence of God's trust in you. He gives it daily as a reminder that there is still something inside you that must be unlocked. Yet many people live as if time is guaranteed, as if tomorrow is promised, as if delay has no consequences. They tell themselves they will begin when they feel ready, when they have more support, when people approve, when conditions improve, when courage appears. But purpose does not respond to convenience. Purpose responds to decision. Your life will not change when circumstances change. It will change when your focus changes. The enemy wants you to postpone destiny because postponement is the silent assassin of potential. Every day you delay, you strengthen the voice of excuses and weaken the voice of purpose. Every time you choose comfort over calling, you bury a piece of the leader inside you. The truth is, many people waste time because they do not understand their worth. When you do not see yourself as valuable, you give your time to people who treat you as optional. When you do not honor your gift, you allow others to misuse it. When you do not recognize your assignment, you become available to distractions. When you do not know your purpose, you become accessible to anyone who wants to borrow your life for theirs. And there are many people in your life who benefit from your lack of focus. They benefit when you stay small because it keeps them comfortable. They benefit when you stay confused because it keeps them in control. They benefit when you remain unfocused because your clarity would expose their complacency. But you cannot blame people for how they treat your time when you are the one who refuses to protect it. Focusing on yourself begins with understanding that your time is holy. It is not something to be discounted, donated without discernment, or distributed without wisdom. You must learn to say no without guilt, because every yes you give to something meaningless is a no to something essential. You must learn to disconnect from conversations that drain your spirit and environments that weaken your discipline. You must learn to walk away from people who interrupt your growth, even if you love them. You must learn to distance yourself from those who celebrate your stagnation but become threatened by your transformation. You must learn to guard your mind, because the wrong influence can waste more time than the wrong decision. You must learn to guard your heart, because emotional attachments can trap you in seasons you should have left long ago. You must learn to guard your energy, because greatness requires fuel. When you focus on yourself, you begin to see that every day carries a piece of your destiny. There are moments God has prepared for your development. Divine opportunities that appear only when your mind is aligned with your assignment. But distractions blind you to divine timing. When you waste time, you miss doors that will not open twice. You miss connections that were sent to elevate you. You miss ideas that were meant to transform your future. You miss revelations that were meant to break generational cycles. You miss instructions that were meant to guide you into your next season. Time is the womb of purpose, and focus is the midwife that brings it forth. The reason some people never rise is not because they lack talent, anointing, intelligence, or opportunity. It is because they lack focus. They invest energy into battles that are irrelevant to their destiny. They fight to keep relationships God has already ended. They chase validation from people who do not even value themselves. They entertain emotions that sabotage their discipline. They surround themselves with voices that contradict their assignment. They confuse activity with progress, movement with direction, and connection with purpose. A person can be extremely busy and still be failing, because success is not defined by motion but by focus. The most dangerous people in your life are not your enemies, they're the ones who waste your time. Enemies can push you to pray, fight, grow, and evolve, but time wasters subtract without contributing, distract without building, and consume without investing. They come in the form of friends with no vision, relationships with no direction, conversations with no depth, commitments with no fruit, and habits with no reward. They come disguised as comfort, entertainment, procrastination, comparison, and fear. They come looking harmless, but they cost you years. You must decide to focus on yourself, because destiny is personal. You came into this world alone, and you will stand before God alone. You will give an account for how you used your time, your gift, your influence, your opportunities, and your potential. No one else is responsible for the development of your purpose. No one else is accountable for the management of your time. No one else is obligated to protect your destiny. The moment you realize this, your focus becomes sharper, your decisions become wiser, your standards become higher, your relationships become healthier, and your life becomes aligned with purpose. The future you desire is not waiting for a better environment, it is waiting for a better focus. It is waiting for you to stop giving energy to what drains you and start giving energy to what builds you. It is waiting for you to stop being available to everyone and start being committed to your assignment. It is waiting for you to stop apologizing for choosing yourself. It is waiting for you to stop shrinking your potential to fit relationships that no longer match your direction. It is waiting for you to stop surrendering your time to those who have no intention of growing. It is waiting for you to stop answering calls that interrupt your peace. It is waiting for you to stop indulging distractions that sabotage your future. It is waiting for you to stop wasting your divine currency on temporary pleasures that cost you eternal impact. Focus is a spiritual discipline because it requires you to starve your distractions and feed your destiny. It requires you to silence the noise around you so you can hear the instruction within you. It requires you to walk away from crowds so you can walk toward purpose. It requires you to choose growth even when it isolates you. It requires you to prioritize development even when others do not understand. It requires you to invest time into prayer, learning, creating, and becoming instead of wasting it on gossip, entertainment, comparison, and emotional chaos. It requires you to establish boundaries that protect your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical space. It requires you to recognize that anything that steals your focus is stealing your future. The greatest breakthroughs in life do not come from doing more, they come from focusing more. When you master focus, you master destiny. You move from surviving to progressing, from existing to becoming, from dreaming to manifesting, from hoping to building, from wishing to working. You begin to see results where you once saw excuses. You begin to produce fruit where you once produced frustration. You begin to create opportunities where you once waited for them. You begin to attract the right people because purpose always attracts purpose. You begin to see the hand of God guiding your steps, aligning your season, and accelerating your journey because God responds to focus. Your time is the currency of your destiny, and when you finally understand the value of that time, you will stop wasting it on anything that does not honor your assignment. Self-focus is not selfishness, it is stewardship, because every destiny God has designed requires management, cultivation, and intentional personal development. Many people misunderstand self-focus because they were raised to think that focusing on themselves is prideful or self-centered, but the truth is that nothing in creation fulfills its purpose without attention, discipline, and deliberate growth. A seed does not become a tree by accident. It requires nurturing. A gift does not mature through neglect. It requires commitment. A calling does not activate itself. It requires a person who is willing to take responsibility for their own becoming. Self-focus is the foundation of spiritual alignment because God cannot bless what you refuse to develop. You cannot pray for a future you are unwilling to prepare for. You cannot ask for increase in areas where you will not invest the effort to grow. You cannot request elevation while living with the habits that sabotage progress. God responds to personal stewardship because stewardship is the proof of readiness. Self-focus means understanding that you are the first assignment God gave you. Your life, your mind, your body, your gift, your decisions, and your time are all areas He expects you to manage with diligence. Neglecting your own development does not make you humble, it makes you ineffective. You cannot pour into others from an empty spirit. You cannot lead people from a place of confusion. You cannot inspire from a place of burnout. You cannot build from a place of weakness. Focusing on yourself is an act of obedience because God expects you to multiply what He placed in you, and multiplication does not happen without personal attention. Many people sabotage their own futures because they assume God will do everything for them, but God only does what you cannot do, not what you refuse to do. You cannot outsource your discipline. You cannot outsource your growth. You cannot outsource your healing. You cannot outsource your decisions. You cannot outsource your responsibility to build the life God assigned to you. Self-focus is an indication that you understand the weight of your calling. When a person sees themselves the way God sees them, they automatically separate from anything that weakens their development. They begin to treat their life as valuable, their purpose as sacred, and their growth as essential. They stop engaging in conversations that weaken their spirit. They stop participating in relationships that distract their direction. They stop entertaining environments that disconnect them from their assignment. They stop giving energy to situations that do not serve their development. They stop investing time into people who are committed to remaining the same. They stop wasting emotional strength on pleasing others at the expense of their purpose. They stop pretending to be okay with mediocrity when God has called them to greatness. Self-focus often reveals who and what was never meant to stay in your life. When you decide to grow, not everyone will be comfortable with your decision. Some people liked you better when you were insecure because your insecurity made you predictable. Some people liked you better when you had no boundaries because your lack of boundaries made you convenient. Some people liked you better when you didn't believe in yourself because your doubt made them feel superior. Some people liked you better when you were lost because your lack of direction made them feel needed. But when you decide to focus on yourself, you expose their real motives. You discover who was attached to your destiny and who was attached to your stagnation. Growth reveals loyalty. Discipline reveals intention. Purpose reveals alignment. When you start becoming the person God designed, those who were depending on the old version of you will resist, criticize, or distance themselves, not because you changed for the worse, but because you changed into someone they can no longer control. Self-focus is not ignoring others. It is prioritizing your development so you can serve others with clarity, strength, and purpose. You cannot help people effectively when your mind is chaotic. You cannot elevate others when your spirit is exhausted. You cannot guide anyone when you are emotionally unstable. You cannot lift others when you are spiritually empty. When God develops a person, He develops them privately first. He strengthens their identity. He heals their wounds. He sharpens their vision. He grounds their character. He matures their thinking. He cleans their environment. He aligns their heart. He prepares their spirit. Only after that personal development does He send them to influence others. The mistake many people make is trying to help the world while ignoring their own brokenness. They carry responsibilities that crush them because they never took time to build the inner strength required to carry the weight of their calling. Self-focus is not selfish, it is preparation. When God blesses a person, He blesses their capacity, not their excuses. He blesses their discipline, not their distractions. He blesses their direction, not their confusion. He blesses their effort, not their wishful thinking. He blesses their stewardship, not their neglect. Many people pray for blessings that their current level of personal development cannot sustain. They ask for opportunities they are not prepared to manage. They want relationships they are not mature enough to honor. They want influence without integrity. They want increase without discipline. They want elevation without transformation. They want prosperity without sacrifice. But God refuses to pour new wine into old wineskins because the blessing would destroy them. This is why self-focus is essential. It enlarges your capacity so you can hold what God plans to give you. Self-focus requires honesty. You must look at yourself without excuses. You must confront habits that delay your progress. You must acknowledge weaknesses you have been running from. You must admit that some of your limitations are self-inflicted. You must recognize patterns that keep repeating because you refuse to grow. You must accept responsibility for the parts of your life that are not producing fruit. Growth begins where excuses end. Self-focus forces you to stop blaming others for outcomes you created. It forces you to stop waiting for rescue and start practicing responsibility. It forces you to stop expecting different results from the same behavior. It forces you to stop tolerating what is destroying you. It forces you to stop carrying dead weight. It forces you to stop expecting progress without change. Self-focus develops discipline, and discipline is the language of destiny. Discipline separates the dreamers from the achievers, the talkers from the builders, the wishers from the workers. Discipline protects your future from your feelings. Discipline makes you consistent even when motivation disappears. Discipline keeps you committed even when comfort calls your name. Discipline turns purpose into progress. Without discipline, purpose remains potential. Self-focus requires you to build habits that align with your calling. It requires you to wake up with intention. It requires you to surround yourself with people who value growth. It requires you to silence distractions that steal your productivity. It requires you to feed your mind with wisdom instead of noise. It requires you to protect your energy from emotional chaos. It requires you to manage your time with precision. It requires you to guard your spirit from negativity. It requires you to say no to anything that contradicts your direction. Self-focus develops clarity. Many people are confused because they live in environments that overwhelm them with opinions. They listen to voices that contradict their purpose. They entertain advice from people who have never built anything. They allow social pressure to shape their identity. They waste emotional strength trying to be accepted by people who do not value them. But when you focus on yourself, your mind becomes clear. You stop trying to impress people who are not even paying attention. You stop comparing your journey to others who are not running your race. You stop desiring validation from those who cannot see your vision. You stop making decisions out of fear. You stop lowering your standards to fit into environments that are beneath your calling. Clarity comes when you disconnect from the noise and reconnect with your purpose. Self-focus develops courage. You cannot step into destiny without confronting fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of change, fear of success, fear of responsibility, fear of leaving people behind, fear of stepping into the unknown. When you begin to focus on yourself, you begin to realize that fear is not an enemy to avoid, but a signal that you are stepping into unfamiliar territory. Purpose always demands courage because purpose always stretches you beyond what feels safe. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that purpose is greater than fear. Self-focus strengthens your spirit so you can take bold steps even when you are uncertain. It teaches you to trust God's vision more than your insecurities. It teaches you to step out even when you cannot see the full picture. It teaches you to move even when you are afraid. Courage is the evidence that you have chosen purpose over comfort. Self-focus develops separation. When God wants to use a person, he begins by calling them out of what is familiar. He separates them from distractions, habits, relationships, thought patterns, and environments that cannot support their next level. Separation is not punishment, it is preparation. You cannot rise while holding hands with people who want to stay on the ground. You cannot elevate while staying connected to those who are committed to mediocrity. You cannot enter your next season while dragging dead relationships from your last season. You cannot align with your calling while entertaining people who disrespect your purpose. Self-focus teaches you to let go without apology. It teaches you to release without fear. It teaches you to walk alone if necessary. It teaches you to value alignment over attachment. It teaches you that losing the wrong people is part of gaining the right future. Self-focus develops identity. Many people do not know who they are because they have spent their lives trying to be what others expected. They were shaped by criticism, molded by comparison, defined by environments, influenced by insecurity, and controlled by culture. But when you focus on yourself, you begin to uncover the version of you that God designed before opinions reshaped you. You begin to see your worth. You begin to recognize your potential. You begin to honor your gift. You begin to celebrate your progress. You begin to develop confidence. You begin to choose yourself. You begin to value your journey. You begin to stand firm in your identity. You begin to live with purpose instead of pressure. Identity becomes strong when focus becomes personal. Self-focus develops alignment. When your mind, heart, decisions, habits, relationships, and environment all point in the same direction, you become unstoppable. Misalignment slows destiny, but alignment accelerates it. When you focus on yourself, you start removing contradictions from your life. You stop saying you want peace while entertaining chaos. You stop saying you want growth while clinging to stagnation. You stop saying you want change while repeating old habits. You stop saying you want destiny while wasting time. You stop saying you want God's best while holding on to what he told you to leave. Alignment makes your life a magnet for divine favor because God blesses what is aligned with his purpose. Self-focus is spiritual maturity because it proves that you understand God's investment in you. He placed gifts in you. He placed strength in you. He placed ideas in you. He placed wisdom in you. He placed potential in you. He placed purpose in you. But he will not force you to develop them. He gives you the opportunity, but you must choose growth. He gives you the vision, but you must choose discipline. He gives you the direction, but you must choose obedience. He gives you the time, but you must choose investment. He gives you the potential, but you must choose development. Self-focus is stewardship because it honors what God placed inside you by refusing to let it die unused. The more you prioritize your assignment, the more God removes distractions disguised as relationships, opportunities, or emotions, because destiny requires clarity, and clarity requires separation. One of the most misunderstood principles of spiritual growth is that God does not simply add things to your life, he subtracts first. He clears the ground before he builds. He prunes before he grows. He empties before he fills. He removes what cannot stay before he reveals what must come. Many people confuse loss with punishment when in reality it is divine protection. They confuse separation with rejection, when in truth it is redirection. They confuse endings with breakdowns, when in truth they are breakthroughs. When you begin to prioritize your assignment, you awaken a spiritual chain reaction that forces everything not aligned with your purpose to detach itself from your journey. It is not personal, It is spiritual. It is not emotional. It is intentional. God removes what cannot stay so you can become who you must be. There are relationships in your life that feel comfortable, familiar, or emotionally attached, but they are not aligned with your assignment. They drain your energy, dilute your vision, or delay your growth. As long as your life remains unfocused, those connections remain unchallenged. But the moment you begin to prioritize your purpose, those connections begin to shake. Conversations that once felt normal suddenly feel empty. Interactions that once felt enjoyable suddenly feel draining. Environments that once felt comfortable suddenly feel restrictive. This is not a coincidence, it is spiritual exposure. When God shines light on your path, He also shines light on your relationships. He reveals who is aligned with your future and who is only attached to your past. He shows you who can walk with you and who cannot survive where you are going. You do not lose people when you grow. You simply discover who was never meant to stay. Prioritizing your assignment exposes hidden motives. Some people only like you when you are struggling because your struggle makes them feel useful. Some only support you when you are silent because your silence makes them comfortable. Some only celebrate you when you stay small because your smallness protects their ego. Some only walk with you when you expect nothing because your needs would expose their selfishness. But when you focus on becoming the person God designed, you disrupt their comfort. Your growth threatens their stagnation. Your discipline exposes their laziness. Your clarity confronts their confusion. Your progress challenges their excuses. That is why people begin to distance themselves when you focus, not because you have changed for the worse, but because you have changed into someone who no longer fits their expectations. Growth is the filter that reveals intentions without arguments, explanations, or conflict. Purpose has a sound, and only those assigned to your destiny can hear it. When you prioritize your assignment, the frequency of your life changes. Your thoughts shift, your choices shift, your habits shift, your conversations shift, your priorities shift. And because energy attracts alignment, you begin to notice that people who once felt close now feel distant. People who once understood you now misunderstand you. People who once encouraged you now question you. People who once walked with you now criticize you. This shift is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are evolving. When God elevates you, He separates you first because elevation requires atmosphere. If your circle does not match your destiny, God must adjust your relationships before He releases your next level. Distractions are not always bad things. Sometimes they come disguised as blessings. A distraction is anything that pulls your focus away from becoming who God designed you to be. Some opportunities come at the wrong time and drain more than they give. Some invitations flatter your ego but weaken your discipline. Some connections feel exciting but damage your direction. Some open doors are traps that appear attractive but pull you away from purpose. When you prioritize your assignment, God begins to block opportunities you would have accepted before. Suddenly, certain doors close with no explanation. Certain conversations stop unexpectedly. Certain collaborations fall apart without warning. Certain plans collapse at the last minute. You may feel frustrated, but heaven feels relieved. God is saving you from what your emotions cannot see. God is blocking what your discernment has not yet matured to detect. God is removing what you would have clung to if He allowed you to choose based on excitement instead of purpose. The deeper you walk in your assignment, the more precise God becomes in managing your connections. He begins to remove emotional attachments that could sabotage your growth. Not every person who enters your life is meant to stay, and not every person who leaves your life is meant to return. Some people are seasonal lessons, not lifelong partners. Some are temporary scaffolding, not permanent pillars. Some were only assigned to your past pain, not your future purpose. But because we often confuse emotional comfort with spiritual alignment, we cling to people God is trying to release. This is why prioritizing your assignment can feel painful. You are losing what your heart wants, but gaining what your destiny needs. God does not remove people to hurt you. He removes them to protect your future. Emotional distractions are some of the most dangerous because they disguise themselves as healing, connection, comfort, or affection. Yet they drain your focus, interrupt your discipline, and weaken your spiritual strength. God knows that your emotions can blind you faster than any external temptation. So when you begin to prioritize your assignment, He exposes emotional attachments that have the potential to ruin your future. You start to notice red flags you once ignored. You start to feel uneasy in places you once found exciting. You start to sense dishonesty in people you once trusted. You start to feel empty after conversations that once felt supportive. You start to desire solitude more than social noise. This emotional shift is divine surgery. God is separating your heart from what your spirit has outgrown. The more you focus on your assignment, the more God highlights the difference between what is good and what is right. Something can be good for your emotions, but wrong for your destiny. Something can feel peaceful, but still be outside God's plan. Something can seem logical, but still be a spiritual misalignment. Something can feel comfortable, but still delay your growth. When God begins to remove distractions, He is not taking away what is good. He is making room for what is divine. He is clearing space for what carries His signature. He is eliminating anything that competes with His voice. He is stripping away anything that dilutes your anointing. He is preparing you for a future that requires full obedience, not partial commitment. Prioritizing your assignment means valuing the voice of God over the noise of people. It means honoring your direction over your desire. It means choosing purpose over pleasure, discipline over distraction, long-term destiny over temporary comfort. It means refusing to allow relationships to become idols. It means refusing to let validation become a weakness. It means refusing to let disappointment become a distraction. It means refusing to let emotions outrank instruction. When you make this internal decision, heaven begins to move on your behalf. God begins to edit your circle without asking your permission. He begins to protect your destiny more aggressively than you protect your comfort. And though it may feel confusing at first, with time you discover that every removal was necessary. The more you focus, the more God reveals. The more disciplined you become, the more He speeds your progress. The more you align your life with purpose, the more He accelerates your destiny. But this acceleration comes at a cost, the cost of letting go. You cannot hold on to everything and everyone and still walk into the fullness of your assignment. Destiny demands surrender. Purpose demands sacrifice. Calling demands obedience. Growth demands separation. You cannot evolve and stay attached to what keeps you small. You cannot rise and still entertain what drags you down. You cannot transform and still cling to what feeds your weakness. You cannot become who God designed while holding on to who you used to be. There are people who were assigned to your brokenness but cannot survive your healing. There are relationships that were attached to your insecurity but cannot handle your confidence. There are connections that were comfortable with your silence but cannot handle your voice. There are friendships that supported your past but cannot enter your future. There are environments that tolerated your confusion but cannot handle your clarity. When you prioritize your assignment, God reveals the truth. Not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. Every removal is a promotion in disguise. Every separation is a step forward. Every closed door is divine redirection. Every ending is divine editing. Every disturbance is divine protection. Every loss is divine alignment. Nothing God removes from your life was necessary for your destiny. Nothing He shuts off was meant to remain. Nothing He blocks was designed to build you. When heaven intervenes, it is because God sees what your heart cannot. You may cry, but you will thank Him later. You may feel lonely, but you will see the wisdom in it. You may feel confused, but clarity is coming. You may feel emptied, but you are being prepared to be filled. And here is the truth you must embrace. The moment you prioritize your assignment, heaven prioritizes you. And the greatest evidence that God has shifted His focus toward your future is simple. He starts removing anything that threatens it. People disappear. Opportunities collapse. Emotions shift. Doors close. Connections detach. Plans fall apart. Attachments break. And you stand in the middle of it, wondering why everything is changing so quickly. But if you look closely, you will realize that heaven is rearranging your entire life to match the destiny you prayed for. What you call loss, God calls preparation. What you call endings, God calls upgrades. What you call disruption, God calls alignment. What you call heartbreak, God calls protection. What you call separation, God calls elevation. And the moment you finally accept this truth, your life changes. Because you realize God was never trying to take something from you. He was trying to take you somewhere. And the only question left is whether you are ready to go.